Welcome to the Missouri Woods and Water Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Thomas, flying solo today, also handling the tail end of losing his voice. So if I sound a little weird, I just got my voice back 2 days ago, and today's the best day in a week, but I still sound stupid. So today's show is one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Y'all, if anybody listens to this show, you know that I enjoy hunting from the ground. It's become more and more enjoyable for me every year that goes by. Killed my first good buck from the ground last year. Get the chance to talk with ground hunting legend himself, Jared Scheffler with Whitetail Adrenaline. We have an awesome conversation about the positives, negatives with hunting from the ground, some of what he likes as far as gear goes, which he's not a big gear head, but certain things he likes to use and do as a result. Just a great conversation with Jared, and I really appreciate him taking time out of his editing to talk to us. So I'm going to get into our sponsors real quick and kind of run through them decently fast today. It's a good long show with Jared, so I want to get right into it. So I want to say thanks to our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. So we appreciate all of them. Habitat Works, Dustin Williams, give him a call, 816-752-7390. Wealth of knowledge, great guy to work with as well. Reveal Cameras by Tactic Aim. We kind of talked about using cameras during the show a little bit. Obviously, Jared's mostly on public land. I'm mostly on private, so there's a little bit of a difference between the two of us when it comes to that. When I'm using cameras, I'm using Reveals. Morel Targets, got 10 of them outside my patio right now that my son has been shooting, and me as well. So if you're not ready for the season, get a target. Don't care where, but Morel's a good place to start. Check them out. Great stuff. Huntworth Gear. Use our code MWW15 for 15% off. Thanks to Huntworth. My oldest son is going to be using Huntworth this year. He's finally big enough to fit. So that's cool. So I got him a set. He picked Tarnin, by the way, out of the three. Not Tarnin, sorry, Vertec. Out of the three patterns, I let him choose which one he wanted me to buy for him, and he decided on Vertec. I would say I agree with him. It's pretty awesome. Black Ovis, use our code MWW10, 10% off. Get your base layers, merino wool base layers, the only way to go. Black Ovis has got it. A lot of awesome everyday gear as well. Everyday, like, wearing stuff is nice. Camo Fire, download the app. Check out the daily deals. Athlon Optics, all kinds of great stuff. Just look what, low end, middle end, high end, they got it all. What would you like? Find it. And then Huxworks, flow through suppressor technology. We will be having a show with them at some point. I need to get a hold of them, talk about setting that up, but I would like to talk about flow through technology before rifle season for anybody that's looking at suppressors. That's the sponsors. I appreciate all of them. Thanks to Jared for all his time today. And we're just going to get into our show with Jared Scheffler. This is the Missouri Woods and Water Podcast. Okay, got a treat today. A gentleman that I have been looking forward to talking to for a long time. Jared Scheffler with Whitetail Adrenaline. Jared, excited to talk to you today, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. If anybody listens to our show, they know that, I have gotten really excited about hunting from the ground the past few years. And every year it seems like the percentage of my hunting from the ground goes up and up and up. Last year being the largest percentage of all of them. So, naturally I love listening to and talking to guys that are known for that, right? And the two people in the industry that I know are you, and then Zach Farrenball is another one. I'm sure you know who Zach is.
Oh, yeah.
Who, I'll basically take anything those guys say and eat it up because it's something that's just been a great thing. But before we get into the topic, for anybody that doesn't know, Jared, introduce yourself to everybody, where you're from, and then a little bit about what you do currently with all your hunting endeavors.
Sure. Jared Scheffler, owner of Whitetail Adrenaline. That's the brand, I guess that's how people probably out there would know. But for those that aren't familiar with the Whitetail Adrenaline brand. We've been around for 18 years. We produce sponsor-free, non-commercialized hunting productions, state-of-the-art DVD format. Get your DVDs.
Love it.
It's I love it actually. It's been very interesting to have that model, and hunt. I'm getting sidetracked just a bit, but I mean, hunting content, no matter the platform, I mean, it's a difficult space, whether you go sponsored or like ours. I mean, it's not easy. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices. So I'm originally from Wisconsin. And yeah, I kicked off this business when I was 22? Yeah, right around there. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's how I'm old enough to remember the DVDs when like that was the only way you could get hunting content, right? Yeah. And obviously now YouTube is around, things like that, where you can get it other ways as well. But I kind of think it's pretty cool that you're still like OGing when it comes to the DVDs and I love the model. I love it for a lot of reasons. And the YouTube stuff is great, because, we're from what you kind of told me, we're going to be talking about ground hunting it quite a bit. Well, right. By me not going to YouTube, unless somebody would purchase our DVDs and buy it, they aren't going to, maybe learn some nuggets and whatever that, especially like the hunting public, which you mentioned, like Zach. Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of thousands of people get access and kind of get hooked on, well, not only their series, but they're very informational based too. Whereas my format is kind of more entertainment based. I mean, sure, people can learn, but it's not super formal. YouTube, right. It seems like there's a lot more of an educational format to a lot of those types of productions, which is, I mean, it's a different model, and
yeah, it's
good. I mean, well, if everybody was entertainment based, there wouldn't be, you know what I'm saying? But
exactly, yeah. There's different models for a reason. Like, one day I might just want to see some stuff die. Right. Another day I might want to, learn from certain things. Right. I mean, right. They both everything hits the nail on the head at some point in time for somebody. Right. Right. And everybody's got their own like ways they like to consume. Like on our podcast alone, there's 3 of us. Micah and Andy both say hi. They're at work today, but
tell them I said hi.
Yeah, like even us 3, like Andy likes more technical stuff when it comes to listening to podcasts. I like stories. It's just what do you like? Sometimes it strikes your fancy a different way. So
yeah, we're not selling trucks here. What I mean? No. Like,
and even if you were, there's a Ford, there's a Chevy, there's a Dodge. Like, exactly. What do you want?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and also just a quick disclaimer: I'm coming off a major, I don't know what, cold, whatever, but I totally lost my voice. So if I sound like a prepubescent teen to our audience, I'm doing my best. I already had to cancel with Jared once, and I'm doing better. So, but yeah, that's what we're going to talk about is ground hunting, and specifically because it is a topic that I have just kind of really wrapped my head around the past 5 years. So this started about 5 years ago or so. I'm hunting a small farm. It's actually where Andy lives. It's 40 acres, and about 15 of it is timber, right? And so I've got access to Andy's farm, and I've got tree stands kind of just placed throughout the farm, and in one thick area I don't have anything. And so I'm out there hunting one day, and it's this perfect, some of my favorite weather to hunt in, mid 40s, low 50s, slow drizzling rain. And so you're not like getting soaked, but you can hear the rain, everything's wet. And I'm in this ladder stand that I set up a few years before, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm out of the game. They're not here. They're that way. And I just thought to myself, well, then get down, dummy. Like, it's wet. Nothing's going to hear you walking. You can go slow. And just go see what happens. And so I did. That was the first time I ever got down on the ground, outside of sitting on the edge of a field with a rifle back in the day. I mean, I'm talking about with a bow.
Yeah.
And I start still hunting into that area that I wanted to be. And long story short, there was this deer that we knew out there that we nicknamed Evil Eddie. He was about a 10-year-old. I'll send you the video after we're done. He ended up only being like 2 main beams and G1s by the time he died. And I couldn't shoot him because in my county there was a point restriction. And I got within 5 yards of this monarch of a deer on the ground, and I took a video with my phone the entire time because I couldn't shoot him. He wasn't legal, technically. And I just remember like thinking the entire time, I beat him, and if I could have, he's dead, right? I just can't, legally shoot him, and I don't ethically do things wrong. So he got a pass. And I just got this 5 minutes of video footage of this monarch of a deer face to face that I would not have got if I stayed in that tree stand. It would not have happened. He wasn't going to come the way I wanted him to. Yeah. I got to watch him rake it.
They say curiosity kills the cat. Curiosity could have killed the buck in your case.
Could have, right.
You were getting a little like antsy. Okay, it's wet. Why not? And
right.
Yeah.
And so that was like the day I was like, I knew I would like ground hunting. Like that was just kind of one of those aha moments.
Yeah.
And then from there, it has slowly increased for me every year. Now, also things have changed. Hunting properties for me have changed. We've gotten new properties that we, didn't have the opportunity to go set stands in. Kind of basically like treating them like they're public ground at that point. They are private, but and then that's changed even more this year with a new spot that's brand new to us within the last 2 weeks that has nothing in it, right? And so it has become something that has just been very interesting to me. And you got a guy like Jared Scheffler who essentially, when's the last time you sat in a tree? Do you even remember at this point?
Yes, I do. I do remember. I just got to revisit just in case there was like one other
one day off of, yeah,
in between there. But I'm pretty sure it's in the regroup video, which it's all on the ground in regroup. Other than I think that we hung tree stands only to get above the grass high enough to obtain a visual. That was our whole agenda behind it. And I think that is the only day we did that in the entire 2010, which is in the video. But
so
that would have been
technically in a tree.
Yeah. The last buck I shot out of a tree stand would have been 07.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think there is
I actually never really killed many even prior to that out of tree stands.
Well, as you kind of said, like when your dad and you started hunting, that's just kind of how he taught you or
more on the gun side,
right.
The bow side, he'd generally point to a tree. You think you can get in that crotch. But my dad, I'd hear his stories. He would occasionally get on the ground with them. And that was addictive, me just hearing those stories. But he didn't really push that. I don't remember on the bow hunting side. He generally, okay, you think you can get up that tree and whatnot. So
yeah,
but yeah,
that's so. It's just it's for me it's been a little bit of a where you kind of started off and just that's how you knew hunting almost. For me it's been I didn't start hunting until I was a little older, and so when I started hunting, it was my brother-in-law saying, "Hey, go sit in that tree stand." Oh, okay. And so it was just kind of like that's how you hunted at first, ladder stands. And then I would go sit up lock-ons, but they would be in a tree and I would go to that tree. I wouldn't take anything with me. And then I wanted to start running and gunning. And so then I had this XOP stand with these heavy-ass sticks that I would lug into the woods, and I would hate it. I'd hate every second of it. It was heavy. I'm not a big person, and so I don't like weight on me. And so I would have this, I think it was the XOP, I can't remember, Vanish maybe tree stand. And they had their little tree stand transport system, which was like a pack that you would put on the stand. And then I had Hawk helium sticks. And I would just be miserable.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the tree I wanted, I'd be sweating profusely.
Yeah.
I'd look at this tree and I'd go, okay, I guess I'll do it. I'd climb this tree, get all cut up because, I really didn't know what I was doing. And when day broke, I would be like, this sucks. I don't have any shooting lanes, or whatever. Yeah. And so that's how I got into running and gunning, and I just hated it. Right. And so it just was one of those things where I wish I could sit on the ground, but I almost felt like it wasn't, it was against the law. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I'd call it.
You don't do that.
I'd call it a stigmatization.
Yeah,
and
sure.
To a certain degree, and maybe that's not the right word for it, but before ground hunting got repopular, I'll call it repopular because it was a lot more popular decades ago too. And then we went through a hunting culture where it kind of more primarily transition to tree stands and ground blinds and whatnot. That created kind of a little bit of a stigma of almost like doubt that a person can be successful hunting on the ground across, broadly speaking. I'm not saying for every individual that applied or whatnot, but I think that's kind of what you were just describing. That's what it sounds like. It was like you wanted to hunt on the ground or whatnot, or you thought about it, but there was kind of like that I can't be successful, which was kind of false.
100%. Yeah.
It can be true. It can be, it can be true, but it's all situational. It could blow out an area. It could blow out if somebody's only got 40 acres and they're out there ground pounding it every day, it could most certainly blow that out. So it could be truth, or it could be very advantageous. It's situational based, whether it's going to be. The one thing I will say, you kind of mentioned this, I think prior to this starting, I think it was, that you've done, or no, I think it was on this within when we started, you hunted more on the ground this past season than ever. And when you said that, it made me kind of think about all the people that have, told me I started hunting on the ground and da-da-da-da. And I thought about it and I was like, as you were talking, it crossed my mind. I'm like, I don't actually really recall anybody that I can, not saying that this is the case with everybody, but it never sounds like they retreat. It only sounds like they begin.
They keep getting more and more,
yeah. And honing their skills in that way once they start that type of hunting style.
And I could definitely see that. And we'll get into like the current things that are going on, but there's different dichotomies that pull you both ways, especially nowadays with things getting lighter weight. But when you were talking about like that stigma, which I don't know what other term you would give it, right? Yeah, there is that. Like, I could have blown out a deer on the ground. You can also do the same thing in a tree, but it's almost like, well, yeah, but it's not as big of a deal, right? Like, you have a 40-acre farm and you put 10 tree stands throughout it and you only hunt in those 10 trees for the duration of the time you're hunting there. That's could be just as bad as hunting on the ground over and over, because at least the deer have no idea where you may be that day.
The element of surprise.
Right. But with those 10 tree stands, like, you got to be silly to think that a mature whitetail doesn't figure out that there's been something in that tree for the past 4 years.
Yeah, I always get a little bit of human odor around this little pocket or something and begin avoiding it. And now a stigmatization has been created for the deer.
Right. And then you wonder, how come there's no deer that ever come by this tree anymore?
Right.
Yeah. So, but sorry for the coughing.
Oh, you're fine.
But so we have a so I guess the first thing is, so for the person that's thinking about doing it, let's just talk about the positives. What are the things that you see from a ground hunting standpoint that just are like, I don't know why you wouldn't try this. Why are you not doing this? Like, what are some things that you love about hunting from the ground? I don't care if it's 1, 2, or 3 or 20. What are some things about hunting from the ground that people should look at and say, yeah, this makes sense. Maybe I should try it. Like, just, you can do 30,000 feet or you can drill down. I don't care. Let's just start talking when it comes to the positives.
Yeah, a few just popped into my head as you mentioned it. The first one is generally people's encounter rate go up. They not necessarily their success, their overall success goes up, but generally their encounter rate on animals goes up, increases quite a bit usually. Now they may blow those deer out as they're honing their sneaky skills or whatnot, which that kind of leads into my next point, which is you're going to learn a lot. And you learn a lot if you were only a ground hunter and you took up stationary hunting, you'd learn a lot in a different aspect doing that as well, more observing things and watching, you'd learn some different things there too. But by not doing something like not ground hunting, you miss out on learning a lot of other skills. And that's a whole nother, that could
podcast
go on for a while. But yeah, and then one of the third things that comes to mind for me is just the experience you get. Whether you shoot one or not, it's such a thrill. It was such a thrill, I'm sure, for you to get that close to that big one that you could have shot him. And then when you do connect and are successful on the ground like that, it's hard to explain exactly, but it's like hunting from a tree stand or a blind. It kind of has a little bit less of a in the face kind of, I'm right there with that animal. It's right. A little bit out of this world kind of feeling compared to on the ground. Oftentimes, like obviously in a tree stand, you could get pegged by a big one and it's a fast scramble to make it all happen. And that can kind of make it feel more like in the face, I think. But on the ground, generally that experience is very thrilling of face to face with that animal. So those are three that just kind of
It's like personal, right? It's the difference between bow hunting and rifle hunting. You can kill a deer with a rifle and it's cool at 100 yards, right? Yeah. Or 200 yards, 300 yards. I mean, we've all probably done it. That's how I started. A lot of people started rifle hunting.
Yeah.
But it's much more personal when it's at 30 yards with a bow. And then it's much more personal when it's at 15 yards on the ground at eye level with that deer.
Yeah.
Or longbows. Just, that extra. For me, like the other positive was, tell me how you feel about this. You look at a piece of property that you might go hunt. And when you're looking at that map, you could literally hunt anywhere on that map because there's nothing pigeon-toeing you to a tree.
Right.
To this. You could sit next to a rock in the middle of an open field if you really wanted to, right?
Well, yeah, and that brings a fourth area, and I've talked about this over the years, and that is adaptability.
Right.
So that's the next thing that kind of came to mind with ground hunting is you're free and you're adaptable to the ever-changing situation. So you spot a big one, in maybe a person that's a tree stand only format. It's like, well, he's not going to come this way, but maybe tomorrow night I can relocate and I can hang some tree stands over there and maybe he'll do the same thing. But on the ground, it's like, boom, got the visual. He's cruising or whatever, or maybe it's early season and he's working towards a field or whatever. And it's like, I can make a move on this thing right now. Right. That's adaptability on the fly in the moment. Or you're out there and you run into other hunters or another hunter and it's like, no problem. That used to, as a stationary hunter, that can really rock a person's like, man,
this is my tree.
All this gear in here. And here again, when we're talking about this stuff, I think the hybrid model of doing both is very, very advantageous. This, I never took a standpoint of an agenda to try to reduce or eliminate stationary hunting, because there's a lot of times I've been out there and it's like, man, if I would hang a tree stand right there and hang out for 2 days, I would probably be very successful doing that. So, there's a lot of success that happens in that space as well. We're here talking about ground hunting and whatnot, but that adaptability, because what I began to realize years and years ago is by taking that chance, that risk, once we had a visual, like putting together a plan, and that plan may have to come together like what we need to do in a matter of seconds or a split second, or it may be a situation that you have the time and it takes evaluation for quite a while to figure out exactly how you're going to move in on this animal. But getting to where I was going with this years ago, I realized we're better off. We have a higher success if we take that risk versus I'm going to try to set up on him tomorrow night and hope he does the same thing. Yeah. I realized that the success of most situations. Now, early season, there's been some times we've kind of like, ooh, that's going to be really risky. We're not seeing pressure. Tomorrow there's going to be better winds. There's a pretty good chance we can get a beat on him and do it tomorrow. There's certain cases where we will kind of hold back from that, but for the most part, it's all situationally based, but most of the situations we found it's best to put together a plan. And, many times it doesn't work out too, but many times of playing the I'm going to set up on him tomorrow over there and hope it leads to not success many times in that space too.
Right.
But even when it doesn't lead to success in those ground situations, there's usually a lot of, or there should be, if you want to hit the next level as a hunter in that space, there should be a lot of evaluation that goes on of what made that not work. What did I do wrong or read the animal wrong and what I thought he was going to do? Or did I move too quickly here? Or did I not move quick enough? Or, did I take my eyes off him to try to, watch my next step? And while I was making that next step, I looked up and he's got me pegged.
Right.
I should have never took my eyes off him when I was making that step. There's a lot of that micro cross, self-evaluation of what made it unsuccessful that should go on. If it doesn't go on, then the hunter will never develop into a more honed hunter because, for instance, many times with me doing it with a longbow, I am generally trying to get really tight on these animals. So I'm just going to use this as an example. And quite often, and this is on the videos, a lot of times on those deer, you got to cheat the wind. You're cutting the wind to just barely make it work. And the tighter you get on that animal, the less margin you have for a wind gust that is going to slide over to them and catch them. And that's gotten me many times. Now, the proper way to evaluate that it isn't, well, the wind gust came in and got me. Well, that doesn't fix a long-term solution. You know, that's not a long-term solution. It's like I have to evaluate, okay, I cut it just a little bit too much. I should have been 2 yards, maybe 2 yards over, or maybe I should have moved a little bit quicker and I could have gotten my shot off before that wind current ever came in. You know, there's ways a person can evaluate that, what they should have done. If they, okay, we are aware that the wind current is what got us, but the wind switched for just a split second. That gust carried over to him. I was so tight on him that it didn't take much. You know, when you're 40 yards out, that's much different than being 10, 15, 20 yards out. It doesn't take much of a wind gust to slide that scent stream over.
Right.
So the point behind all of this is if the individual doesn't face reality of what exactly I could have done and what exactly went wrong, then they'll repeat, and they'll always be able to use, well, the wind gust got me again.
Yeah.
You know,
damned old wind.
You know, and I'm just using that as an example, you know, so.
Right. Well, and it, like, the problem I've run into is a lot of times I tend to do that overthinking or that analyzing before something bad happens. So, like, for instance, I'll tell the story now to you, you know, in layman's or Cliff's Notes version. So I told you this last year was the year I hunted the most on the ground that I ever have. So Micah and I and Andy got a new property to hunt. It wasn't a very big property, but we got it in the middle of October. So, you know, season's already going in Missouri at that time. And I had just gotten into saddle hunting the year before. And so I got these Trophy Line makes a stick called Hyperlights. They're really lightweight. They've got a lightweight saddle. And I really enjoyed it because it made things easier for me. I don't like heaviness. It made things nice. This property didn't have that great of trees, though, right? So I found myself being like, what am I going to do? So what I did was every day I went hunting, I took my saddle with me. And if I didn't find a tree I liked, who cares? It doesn't weigh anything. Like, I just sat everything on the ground and I found somewhere to sit. And so that last season, I just found myself on the ground just as much.
Sure.
Because if I didn't like where I wanted to be here in this general area, and if a tree didn't suit me, you know, I just dropped the stuff and I didn't worry about having to carry it in. It wasn't that heavy anyway.
I think that's a really smart, because you didn't compromise the location.
Right.
By just, hey, I can't find a tree. You put the priority of, this is where I think I need to be hunting. Despite there's not a good tree, I'm still going to hunt it on the ground.
Right.
You didn't pigeonhole yourself and say, well, I'm not going to hunt it even though I feel like this is where I should.
Yeah, I'm going to go 100 yards over here so I can hang in a tree.
I think that's the best way to go about that, you know, for guys that are doing the hybrid thing.
And then the caveat I throw into that is I have 3 sons who are, at the time, 13, 9, and 6. And so anytime I took one of them, I didn't have the ability to get them in a tree saddle with me, and nor did I want to mess with having a kid to have to worry about him falling out of a damn tree. And so every time I took them out there, I knew I was going to be on the ground. There was no question. Yeah. And so we happened to have this particular day. We were able to use cameras on this property. So I had a camera out, had a mature buck that looked like he was going to bed in this thick area at about 9 a.m. I was going to go out there that afternoon. And so my second son wanted to go hunting with me. And I said, Chase, we're going to hunt on the ground and we're going to kill this 8-pointer. And of course, I'm just saying that to make him excited. I hope that's the case, but all the conditions were right. And if I was correct in saying that buck went to bed in that thick stuff by the river, I thought I would have a chance to see him that evening based on where I wanted to be. So I take my son out there, go to where I wanted to be. I set him up. I actually had a crossbow for him. He was going to be a hunter that night too. And long story short, this buck comes out and I shot him at 7 yards right before he caught our wind with my bow, and he died. And it was a great one of my favorite hunts ever, because not only was it my first mature buck on the ground, my son was with me too.
Yep.
And he got, the only thing that would have made it cooler is if he got to kill it instead of me.
Yeah.
Right. And after that, I'm just obsessed. Like I still have my saddle, and I'm probably still going to use it, but it's just like, man, I don't need it. Yeah. Like this is, now I will say 2 weeks later, I killed another buck at 12 yards out of my saddle. That was also fun. But you know what I'm saying? It was just one of those situations where until you experience that for the first time, it's hard to explain how awesome it is.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things with hunting on the ground is I think it makes a person just more engaged in the hunt, because if one's not careful, more can go wrong. So it causes the hunter to have more awareness of things, like it's when you're let's say hunting out of a tree stand, it's like you can kind of get on your phone and you're going to get bored kind of, and it's like, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I think just speaking purely of what happens on the ground is, it's like, at least for me, it's like when I'm on the ground like that, I'm like locked into the hunt. Like there's no scrolling on social.
Every bird that moved by you.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, days, a lot of years would go by and I'd never even get on social media at all. Well, I mean, months sometimes would go by and I wouldn't do that.
That's better.
Even outside of hunting space, but or hunting season. But I'm just saying, just from on the ground side, the awareness is, I think, higher on the hunt. Just naturally occurs in the hunter as well. So.
Well, how many times have everybody's fallen asleep in a tree? Like, how many times have you taken a nap in a tree stand? It happens all the time. I have not gotten tired on the ground yet. Yeah. Right. And it's just kind of like you always feel like which is funny because it could be the same way in a tree.
Yeah.
But you just feel like at any second something could happen and you need to be ready for it to happen. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You just feel like, I don't know, you feel like you're in the wild with the animals more so than if you're just, right up that tree.
Yep.
Now, I will say at the same time, there's been plenty of times where I've been on the ground and I say to myself, it'd be really nice to be about 10 feet in the air right now.
Yep.
That does happen.
Well, yeah, and it's also, so one of the pros to that is it's like a person that's had a long week of work or whatever, it's like can get up their tree and just kind of relax, and maybe they'll still be successful when a buck comes in or whatever, an animal comes in, and they can kind of decompress from their work that week or whatever's going on. Whereas on the ground, it's like it's not quite as relaxing in that way. So I mean, there's pros and cons to both, but
yeah, it's certainly not as comfortable either. I mean, I've done. I'm gonna ask you about some gear questions soon too, because like I'm a guy who I prefer to be like sitting instead of like on the ground. So I've made myself a stool. Not made myself. I have a stool that I use that keeps me close to the ground, but I can still kind of be like mobile. But then I'm like, well, I'm higher than I should be, but I'm not a big person, so that's good. All these second guessing things. Right? Which I think I can see that in you as well. I don't mean that you don't make decisions, but from a really distinguished ground hunter, it just seems like whenever I'm watching you hunt, your brain is always doing something. It's always like trying to make a decision, the next step, Where do I go?
Yeah.
How do you like for me there's thoughts that I have that I need to listen to, and there's thoughts that I have that I need to ignore.
Yeah.
When you are hunting, how the hell do you listen to the right? Because it just seems like you make the right decision 9 times out of 10. How do you listen to those things and discern
Yeah.
what is factual for you and what you should just be like, nah, I'm throwing that in the delete button?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny you brought up thoughts, in there because the average human being has around 80,000 thoughts that enter their brain a day. At least that's the research on it. So now for somebody that's really a thinker, that could be double that.
100.
That could be
right.
100, 120, it could be double that. But it doesn't mean that every thought is the right thought. It doesn't mean that it's true or the best thing to do.
Right.
And so when you kind of mention how do you discern what it's like, I try to view like thoughts are just thoughts, right? Like just because I think it doesn't mean it's right. It's like there should be kind of like the computer has a recycling bin.
Yeah.
Like I try to treat thoughts in a sit with that kind of viewpoint that there's a lot of thoughts that need to go in the trash bin, or need to go in the possible recycle bin, and eventually maybe they make it to the recycling bin, and maybe sometimes not. But anyways, this kind of is going to lead to the next thing, which I call it the battle of the minds, right? So oftentimes in hunting, this happens where hunting on the ground, and not to say it doesn't in other aspects of hunting, but oftentimes there's like a instinctual thought of what I should do in this situation that comes, just boom. And then there's the conscious starts weighing out that is that really what I should do, or is that not what I should do? And that's where it's like, does that go to the recycling bin, or does that not go to the recycling bin? Who do I trust here? Do I trust my instincts of the thought in this particular case, or what I should do, or do I trust conscious that's trying to pick it apart on the pros and cons? So that's what I call the battle of the minds when that occurs. And I think no matter what it is, we're talking about hunting here and hunting on the ground. If a person develops their skills for long enough and has done the evaluation of what went wrong they begin to get more and more successful. When that occurs, they can trust their instinct that that's the right decision more often. And that usually ends up being the better decision, is to trust that. We hear it, trust your instincts, your instincts. And oftentimes that's true. And that could be true very early on for somebody without a lot of experience in hunting on the ground too. It doesn't mean that your instincts is wrong in that particular case, but I think it gets more accurate and more honed as time goes on, and it's more trustable. A person can trust their instincts on that when it's made the right decision. Because essentially what's happened is they've kind of programmed themselves in that space, and programmed themselves in a way where they've gotten to be successful so they can trust it. We went through this, that would have been, I think, the 2017 season. I was filming Chancey quite a bit then. He's a very successful hunter. I've gotten a pretty good amount of success. And we ran into this dilemma multiple times where we sat there and second guessed our instincts, because he's got a lot of experience hunting. He was wondering what are my thoughts on what we should do, and vice versa. I'm like, well, what do you think?
Maybe his thought's better than my thought.
Yeah. And it's like, and then you're evaluating And we weren't ever in a fight or an argument about what to do. We're trying to hone in on what is the best thing to do in this particular case. And all that time that got ate up, whether it was 5 minutes or 2 minutes of extra evaluation, trying to pick it apart to make the right decision. If we would have just trusted our instinct on what we thought, because oftentimes in those cases, our instincts were telling us this is what we probably should do, but if we would have just
see what Jared thinks, maybe
that time, there was a couple of times it was seconds. Like if we would have hee-hawed around and done the second guessing, trying to make the right decision, and just went with what our initial gut instinct was telling us, we would have either gotten the buck or at least gotten the opportunity to make the shot.
Yeah.
But we had the battle of the minds going on, and we had double battle of the minds going on because there was two of us. So we had four essentially. So.
And I think you noticed that. I've started noticing it with myself. And maybe I got lucky this last year because it was one of those things. I was telling you about it. I saw the picture of him, looked at the weather, and I said, if I sit in the southwest corner of this opening and he is in bed in there, he will come out and check this when he gets up. It was right at the beginning. It was, I think, the end of October, beginning of November. He's searching. I think this is exactly what he's going to do. And my instincts were exactly right. Right at the last light, I thought I heard something. I told my son to pay attention. I grabbed his actually, I didn't talk to him. I grabbed his, looking back, apparently I grabbed his leg and squeezed really hard. And he's like, Dad, that hurt. Jeez. And he came out almost exactly like I wanted it to be painted, right? It was almost perfect. And so I got lucky in that. But like 10 years ago, I wouldn't have seen a deer that night because my thoughts just wouldn't have allowed me to go that direction, if that makes sense. Because I would have found a tree stand that I was comfortable going and hanging in and never seen that deer.
Yeah.
That's what would have happened. And so like for me, it was, okay, yes, it was tree stand hunting, but over the years, I just started seeing more deer. It wasn't necessarily killing anything yet, but like my first 2 years hunting, I remember, I don't think I saw a deer. Like I just had no idea what I was doing. I just went and like sat in a tree, right?
Yep.
And then, okay, well, why am I not seeing deer? Well, I started listening to podcasts. They talked about wind a lot, so I started paying attention to wind. Yep. And then next thing you know, hey, I'm seeing deer. That's cool. Well, I want to see the right deer. So now, how do I see these deer? Yeah. And then it just like the decisions, the way my brain was working, decisions were different than they were 3 years before that.
Yeah.
Or things I was even thinking. And so the first thing is like watching people like you and others who do things like this. To me, while it's entertaining, sure, like if you're not becoming a better hunter watching someone, even if you're not going to hunt from the ground, like you're listening to our show right now and being like, I don't give a shit. I'm not hunting from the ground. It's so stupid. Jared's dumb. Nathan's dumb. They're all stupid. Even if that's not what you're going to do, how you can watch somebody like you and not learn something from your hunt is what kills me. My brain's always looking for like, what am I going to learn from watching this too? I mean, this is entertaining, sure, but what can I take from this for myself? Yeah. Even if you're in the middle of freaking Nebraska, western Nebraska, and it's not anywhere close to what I'm hunting here. A whitetail's a whitetail. They all are similar in that regard. So how did Jared pull that off? And I'm guessing that's like when you hunted with him that year, it was one of the things. You knew he knew what he was doing, and right. He knew you knew what you were doing. And so you two come together, and it's just like, all right, well,
It
Is
actually,
one of us wrong?
we both realized as the season was almost gone, it clicked for us like we're hurting ourselves more than we're helping ourselves. And here again, we were never in a fight or an argument, but we realized that it was hurting us more than helping us, which we would have thought that going into it, um, be, because of what you kind of laid out there. It had that.
Yeah.
There was a thought that entered my mind. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is even for somebody that has no interest in hunting on the ground, it's extremely advantageous to kind of hone a little bit of it, because here's one thing that I kind of picked up on when I made a little bit more of an aggressive shift to doing hunting more so on the ground is I realized from the time I left the vehicle, I was in hunt mode. When I was doing more tree stand stuff, my focus was on I'm going to get to this tree, or if I didn't know exactly where, I had a direction of I want to get to this ridge and I want to get up here. Maybe I'd looked at an aerial, maybe I had been in there before, whatever. But I wasn't as much in hunt mode until I got to the tree.
Right.
And once I started hunting more and more and ramped it up on the ground, that thought occurred to me that I'm like, wow, there. And I just saw a post or something came up recently. A guy shot a really big buck in Wisconsin. I can't recall the guy's name, but it was a really big buck in Wisconsin. I read the headline, and it said guy shoots massive buck or whatever it was. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but while sneaking into his tree stand, which I found that interesting because I was like, he's hunting on the way to his tree stand. He was actually hunting, which a lot of hunters, when they're tree stand hunters, they're not hunting.
Nope.
They're not in hunt mode until they get to where they're actually hunting. And so I found when I read that, I was like, ooh, he's essentially, even if he's always tree stand hunting, he's still playing a bit of a hybrid game of hunting while he's en route to where he's going to hunt. And obviously he shot a giant on the ground en route to his tree stand. And it sounded like he was in hunt mode while he was doing that. So for guys that have no interest in hunting on the ground, it might be advantageous to at least consider being a little bit more in hunt mode en route to the stationary location.
Dude, you are preaching like that is. We used to have this discussion as a podcast about, well, how do you go to your tree stand? Do you go slow and try to make minimal noise, blah, blah, blah? Or do you just disturb the woods for 5 seconds, walk to your stand, and climb your tree and shut up? Like, what's better? And I was like, when we would have that discussion, that was me. I'd be like, man, I just want to get to my tree stand so that I don't, like for 2 minutes, the woods don't like me. And then it settles down. But I tell you, I could walk by a 200-inch deer and I wouldn't have known it because straight to my tree, right?
Yeah.
Other people weren't that way. And so like I started switching the way I would go to my tree stand too. And, have my bow ready instead of just like on my pack, and try to take calculated steps and pay attention to what's out there. And I only started doing that because I bumped a deer that I wanted to kill that night in that tree.
Sure.
Like that was how I had to learn it, right? I had to learn it the hard way.
Which is usually
I bumped the deer I wanted to shoot that night.
Which is usually, even somebody listening, to this podcast or any podcast where you're gaining information to learn, oftentimes you still only learn it the hard way, right? But by gathering these nuggets of different things, it's like when you have to learn it the hard way, triggers something in the mind like, oh, that's what they were talking about, or that, so it further concretes, but yeah, we
Yeah.
often learn the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the story of my life, right? But the other thing you talk about, like all the thoughts and, what's the right thought? Which one do you need to put in the recycle bin? If you ever go out in the woods and you just see Nate walking in circles, you know that the OCD took over and I can't figure out what decision to make. So you just need to reset me. Hit me in the back of the head and the reset button will come on or something. I don't know what. But, oh, dude, it happens a lot. Like, there's those nights, like that night I just told you the story of with my son. It was like a decision. I didn't think about it. Everything felt good. And I took him to that spot and we killed the deer. That never happens that way, though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm usually always like, should I be here or should I be 30 yards over here? Because if he comes this way instead of this way, I'll be more, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's usually what my brain is doing.
Yeah.
Now, you make these decisions because you've been doing it for so long, so successfully. But I'm sure there's a time where you're like, I could be here, or I could be 11 yards on the other side of this ditch in case they do this.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't give a perfect answer, but what do you do? Like, hey, in this situation, I've got 6 positives. In this situation, I've got 7. So I'm going to take the other side of the ditch and I'm going to go 11 yards over here.
Whatever.
How do you make those small adjustments like
Yeah.
that?
Usually in that case where it's like, okay, multiple, you just brought up like, okay, you got 6 reasons here, 7 here, but you're still torn. Go with what you feel, what you,
Yeah.
don't look at, well, there's 7 or 6 here. Go with what you feel is the right. And here again, when we were talking about the Battle of the Minds and all these thoughts running through, that happens, when I'm out there hunting. It happens at a much more rapid rate probably than like a person starting out hunting. They're really thinking about certain things maybe for a longer duration because it takes more time to evaluate, like, well, this wind is going like this and that, and that. Whereas like I've gotten to a point where that might be like not require much thought other than, oh, right, need to do this, do. And there's a hunt coming out in our next season. My buddy Dan, it just kind of worked out. Just last minute, it's a circus hunt, but it all came together. And, this buck was coming in. We were on the ground. He's coming. And it's like, Dan has never shot one on the ground. And I'm in like, even though I'm filming, I'm in like do mode of like, okay, get your body turned right now, and it's like, you could tell I'm like, there's a few points where I'm like, get your body, I'm like sounding ornery or whatever. I'm just trying to get
sounding like his dad.
Which
like, hurry up.
You definitely picked that up, but it's like he's not at that. He hasn't hunted on the ground enough to foresee how if he doesn't get his body turned and in position right now, he's going to have a bigger problem doing that when this buck gets in, and I understand that any extra movement, the closer that buck gets, that's required in order to make that draw and then to make that shot is very, very crucial, especially when there's no wind, so, and I don't have time to, in those hunts, there's no time to break.
We don't have time to have a class.
Yeah. He understands that in everything. It just made me kind of think about that particular hunt. There was many times I was like, don't move. Don't effing move. Like usually we kind of got a thing where it's like, if the guy's saying don't move, that kind of means move, but make sure you're paying attention. If the don't effing move slips out, that means
Don't
stop.
effing move.
Stop now. So that's kind of like code, or whatever. The don't move means move with caution, and that's
Yeah.
um, yeah. So, but anyways, I mean, on that hunt, that buck ended up, I think it was 7 yards, came sliding by, and he shot it, and it's turned out to be a really cool hunt. But it just kind of made me think of that, like earlier in my hunting, I maybe would have hee-hawed around on those things, or not detected that that's what needed to happen way in advance. Like, okay, now you got to get, I think he had to reposition 2-3 times and switch his body as that deer was, because I was seeing what that deer was probably going to do, and it was like got to get him moved so it requires least amount of movement. But I didn't have time to explain all that.
Yeah.
So
you know what I think like really helped me with, now obviously you always like pay attention to how a whitetail acts and reacts to things. Elk hunting is, I think, what made all of us good at paying attention to like when to move, when not to move, because elk just absolutely have been beating the shit out of us for the last decade.
They beat the shit out of me.
Like you'll be like, oh, I'm here, and then you go to draw, and the elk's like, shoop, and it sees you, and you're like, how did you see me? Anyways, and then it takes off, right? Yeah. And so like, I shot one other deer on the ground before this one last year. It was a doe, and I didn't even I don't know. I just shot, like, it wasn't even like I was wanting to. It was just, that was what happened that night, and she came, and I'm like, okay, I'll kill you. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a hunt that I felt like I learned anything from.
Yeah.
Well, this night, like when he came in and I saw him, I grabbed my son's leg. I probably did the don't fucking move thing to him. I don't remember. And then it was immediately like, okay, pay attention. All right, he's behind a tree. Set up. Okay, now his head's down. Draw. It's like and it was instinctual. But it wasn't because of whitetail. I think it was because of elk more than anything.
Sure.
And so that I knew that once he came into that opening, if I moved, I was screwed.
Yeah.
I had to get everything done before he came into the opening.
Yeah.
Once he was in there, my bow needed to be drawn back, or he was going to get far enough to get our wind. Right. So, like, it's amazing. Like you just those little tweaks that I do pay attention to when I'm in a tree, but I don't know. It just was even more heightened that night with him.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, taking my sons hunting has made me even more, what's the word? Cognizant of everything, because I've got another human being that I'm trying to like teach.
Right.
And I want him to see deer, because if he doesn't, he might fall out of love with it. And, I don't want him to not see anything. So there's other things that go into it too,
Right. Well, there's two people out there, and hunting on the ground, right. There's a lot of micro decisions, micro things that can, if not done exactly right or not timed exactly right, can cost the hunt, and
yeah.
And it's like, I don't have kids, but it's like, if I wanted my kid to be successful as a hunter, then it's like a fine line, because if you don't, we're applying this to hunting.
Right.
If you don't correct the what went wrong, well, then the person's never gonna migrate into a better hunter. They're never gonna migrate, or if they don't, eventually a child gets old enough, they're doing it, they're processing that
right
on their own, and evaluating what went wrong or whatever. And if they don't, but they're just told, whatever, it's still great, and everything. Well, that's cool, but they're never going to increase their overall success as a hunter. I mean, my father, for example, we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but my dad was a very detailed, very if you're going to do something, you do it as best you can.
Correctly. Yeah.
And for a child, that can be very hard sometimes, maybe. But they kind of have that baked in to them as well. So there's a lot of strengths within that. We were talking earlier, and it just kind of dawned on me. I kind of mentioned that my father, when it came to bow hunting, he'd point at a tree, and I recalled this one time, and that's we clashed because he got me up a tree, he went to a tree, and I understand why a lot of times he'd put me in a tree rather than on the ground is because of this. Exactly what I'm going to say is I ended up getting a little bit curious and got down from the tree and kind of was sneaking around, and here was 2 big bucks on a doe, and they were on this doe and they took off running, and I didn't feel like they seen me. I was pretty sure they never seen me. They were a couple 100 yards out. It looked to me like the doe just got squirrely.
Right.
Well, that kind of from my dad's perspective, that wasn't
They saw you.
the case. They saw me, and I was so sure they didn't. And we had kind of I didn't think about that till we were, I haven't like kind of revisited that, but we had a button of heads that occurred. Here I was getting curious and antsy and got out of the tree to go cruise around a little bit, and he felt like that, and maybe he caught something that I didn't. Maybe he, caught something that they did. Maybe in fact catch me. Either way, we had a butting of the heads that occurred.
Well, in either which way, each of you learned something.
Yeah.
Somehow from that, right? Like. Yeah. You might have been right. He might have been right. Yeah. Who will ever really know unless you get to ask the deer? But each of you had to have taken something from that.
Yeah.
Right? You were like, well, I know I was right maybe, so I'm going to get down again. And maybe he was like, well, maybe he was right.
I think that's kind of the point where we decided maybe we best not be hunting too close to one another.
Go a little further next time.
not. Yeah, exactly. So
why does my dad keep putting me straight up downwind of the other where I think the deer of?
No,
what's going on?
He was always trying to put me in the best scenario for me to be successful.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. So I promised myself I would ask you this question. Okay. So I'm going to shift a little bit because I am a gear junkie to a certain degree.
Okay.
So you don't have to keep it. I don't care how many you say, but what are some items that you always have with you hunting on the ground that you think are very important?
Okay.
That somebody should look at having when they're on the ground.
I love gear, and I'm very fascinated. I mean, I was really considering getting into bow equipment engineering back in high school. So I love gear, and I love looking at gear, and I love all of that, but I'm also very minimalist when it comes to hunting for a number of reasons for myself. But okay, obviously bow and arrow.
Those are important. Yep.
I mean, that's kind of, if you're going hunting, your weapon.
Don't forget the arrows.
Is kind of, you got to have that. And along with that, it's very important, especially for hunting on the ground, The only thing that kills the animal, actually kills the animal, is the broadhead and arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot can go wrong on the ground, and so I'm very particular on what I'm running for a setup, and that there is not a one size fits all. I mean, for centuries they called it arrowsmithing,
Right.
because and if you study ancient archery, I mean, they would have multitude of different types of arrows, different types of points. They all served a different purpose for a different situation. So that's part of what, I mean, there was literally arrowsmiths. That's what they did. That's all they did was arrowsmithing for archers. And what that is honing in and evaluating for, in my case, the situations I'm in with the bow I'm running, what is going to maximize, what is the best thing that's going to bring me maximum there. Because again, there's not a one size fits all. If I shoot way less poundage, I've got to change things on my arrow and broadhead setup to accommodate that, to maximize. So that's very important. And kind of to make a long story short, I prefer, because a lot of times on the ground you end up with a head-on shot, or a 1/4-2 is very, very common. I have found that a cut-on contact one blade head is the best for the multitude of situations. It also gets through weeds and grass and things with least amount of resistance and diversion of the arrow. So that's super important. And I also try to maximize the amount of cut width on that plane to what I think can, for the bow. How do I explain this? A bow with a lot lesser poundage, I can't run too wide of a head, or I run the risk of not penetrating very much.
Yeah, or poor flight. Yeah,
right.
I mean, you can't have a 7-inch wide head on a bow that, you know what I'm saying? Like you can't have a beach ball flying through
exactly.
the air.
And if I'm just blowing through the animal entirely, if I'm blowing entirely through the animal and there's plenty of arrow force, well, it only makes sense to cut a wider swath. Because let's say you're going 16 inches through an animal. Let's just say your arrow is, let's say it's a broadside animal and 16 inches. Well, if your broadhead's an inch cut, you effectively cut a swath of 16 times 1, right? But if you shot a 1.5, you cut 18. So you 1.5 up your amount of lethality, I guess I'd call it. Maybe that's not the right word, but you've increased it 1.5 times. If you have plenty of arrow force to go 2, you've doubled your lethality of when that arrow connects with that animal. And one of the reasons that's so important is because, especially on the ground, a lot of times those situations get very high intense. A lot can go wrong. An arrow can hit a weed and deflect inches, sometimes feet. And that's the reason or the animal, it's like, well, I think he's going to drop 12 inches, because they generally do at this particular distance. By the time that arrow gets there, he's going to drop 10 inches or 12 or whatever. And then the animal decides to not and only drops 2 inches. And then it's like, well, all the precision accuracy in the world went out the window, because I
just hit in a totally different spot I assumed I was going to.
Years ago, I studied how fast the animal reacts to incoming arrows out of 70-pound compounds. And it's like, okay, precision accuracy is not really the answer to some of the issues here. though it can be to some of the
Sure.
issues. In a lot of cases, it was like, well, I mean, a 70-pound compound with that arrow incoming, it's generating a high amount of arrow speed, but in 10 feet of arrow travel, that animal's reacting 2 inches and then another 2 inches for the next 10 feet of arrow travel. How do I know? How can I actually be precisionally accurate on, and so that got, the reason I'm going lengthy into this is because I don't actually have a lot of products, in my,
it's just
so
like
I'm getting
your degree of error,
but it's very
needs to be different, right? Is what you're kind of getting at.
yeah.
Like, if you're playing a game of like bullseye,
Yeah.
if you had a broadhead that was the size of the tip of my pin, and you said I have to hit that spot,
Yeah.
or if I gave you a broadhead that was the size of the tip of my mic,
Yeah.
which one would you rather shoot? I mean, this one's going, if they both were the same effectiveness,
Yeah.
I'd rather have more opportunity to hit my target with this than I would this.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So,
Well,
but there's obviously a point where there's a breakover point for everybody.
Right. And there, there's been many times our arrow didn't connect in the most vital of locations on the animal, but we were still able to successfully get the animal. Because if you cut a long enough and large enough swath through the animal, even if you don't hit anything vital, it's a bad day for the, you
Right.
increase your odds of recovering that animal. So, so I don't really play around too much with, or I take that aspect very, very seriously. Cause I really don't like hitting an animal and not getting it.
Sure. Yeah. Not a good feeling.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling. So let's move on to the next thing. If I don't have binoculars, I feel very.
I knew I was going to hear that one.
That's the one. I could care less after the bow and the arrows broadhead. I could care less about anything else. I don't care if I have camo. I don't care if I have anything else, but binoculars is for me very, very crucial. It's I would feel handicapped, if I left the binoculars. Let's say I did a whole season without binoculars. What would happen is I would be probably a little bit less successful on spotting animals and some of those things, but my own skills would begin to increase in other ways that I maybe couldn't foresee, to where maybe I could get halfway to being as successful without binoculars as what I could with binoculars. Or, I'm using that.
Yeah.
But that's what would happen, is because you'd have to become more reliant on your eyes picking things up, or you'd become more reliant on, like, well, he's a mile out, I can kind of tell that it's a big one, I should probably go after, I can kind of see a frame. I don't know exactly what he is, but your eyes would get, that's kind of an example of your eyes would get a little bit more honed and judgment on that. It wouldn't become reliant as much on the binoculars. So binoculars are a must. And if I'm on a hunt which usually I am, a spotting scope would kind of fall into that.
Yeah.
The second category. And when it comes to binoculars and glassing and things like that, steady is super important. Obviously, really good optics are really important, but a lot of times it's windy or whatever, and having a steady a way to glass and be steady is super crucial. Like, a lot of times in the open country, on high wind days, you can better predict where those animals are going to be bedded. And so it actually reduces the need to glass a lot. You can effectively reduce acreage that you need to glass on those high wind days. They're very advantageous for glassing, but it's very difficult to glass if you're not steady
Right.
in high wind days. So it's like, well, it's so windy, I can't even hardly use my binoculars or whatnot. You got to figure out a way to make it steady, and then you can be very successful doing that, because the high wind has eliminated a lot of acres that you even need to focus on or worry about glassing.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. Yeah.
But so that's kind of something to think about there. Another thing is, I really do not like a lot of weight on my feet. So I always wear a low top. Hiking, it's not even a hiking shoe, it's a racing shoe. And I've ran them for years. And that's all I run. It's the particular one that I've found that I really like is a Solomon Speed Cross. And I'll run those in the mountains. I buy a half a size larger for the mountains, because on the descents you'll kill your toes.
Yep.
With low tops, if you don't, and once I learned that, I never, I did have, for a few years, I'd wear like a little bit higher top, which prevented the toe from hitting in the front of the shoe. And then I realized, well, all I need to do is buy a half size bigger shoe.
And then I'm good to go.
This is the problem. And now I've reduced a third or a half of the foot weight, which on a long day, reducing that weight on the feet is huge. You're so much lighter on your feet. Climbing over the next ridge hold a pound out here for a while on your hand. Well, the same thing kind of applies a little bit in a different way, but similar on the feet. So I like absolutely as light as possible, with good tread. And then also, if you're on a crucial stalk where it's like you got a foot up and the animal looks your direction and you got to set your foot down, that's one department. If you got a 40-ounce boot on, that's
thud.
Well,
Yeah.
It's like I can't set my foot down. Now my foot's in the air, and that 40 ounces is gonna start to become a problem. So
That's a good point. Yeah.
And one of the tricks I've learned even with that is I'll wear them all the way to 5 below 0. Them lightweight. And what I'll do in those cases is I'll run like a heavy wool sock, and then if there's snow, and I'll wear those all the way to 6, maybe even 8 inches of snow, a low top, but then I just run a gaiter.
Yeah.
I run a gaiter and it's no problem. And then to keep dirt and pebbles and that kind of crap out of the low tops, I found Solomon actually makes a really good low top gaiter, and there's other companies that make I think Kuiu makes one, and some other companies make a really lightweight, minimalist gaiter that's more designed not so much for water, but to keep debris and stuff from getting
falling into the shoe.
In terms of the shoes, some guys take their shoes off when they get into the stock. I think there's pros and cons to it. One thing you want to be mindful of if you go down that road is especially if you have feet that sweat. Well, that was one of the other things is I found that my foot was better off to just kind of be slightly chilled, and then it didn't really get ultra cold. Like when it gets colder out, my foot can still breathe in that lightweight shoe. So though it might get a little chilled, it doesn't get super, super cold. Like if I wore a 40-ounce boot in 5 below, if it wasn't like a ultra cold weather boot, a lot of times my foot would sweat and get colder. It'd be frozen.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of found my foot's still cold, but it doesn't get frigid. It doesn't get like complete because it's breathing. It's not got a lot.
And it's not getting wet on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I found that as well. We were talking about, so I got sidetracked on taking the shoes off. if you're going to do that, I would recommend making sure you have a really good wind. Like, let's say you're 100 yards out from the animal and you're thinking, man, there's not much wind noise. I'm going to be stealthier and quieter taking my shoes off. Well, that is true. You're going to be stealthier and quieter taking your shoes off. But if you don't have a very good wind and you're trying to make that wind work and it's kind of touchy, taking your shoes off will create a lot of extra odor, which we don't have near the nose as a whitetail, and we know that.
Yeah.
So just be careful of doing that if you're gonna go that direction.
That is a good point. I have never thought of that side of it.
Yeah, it burnt me on a hunt once. A buddy of mine had told me he had been doing that, and I was like, I thought about doing it, but I hadn't really done it. And I ended up in a situation where I decided to do that, and it cost me the hunt because that exact thing happened. And when I thought about it, I was like, I never really had to take off my shoes anyways. And with having a light shoe, and that particular shoe happens to have a pretty thin sole, I can still feel pretty good with it, what's beneath my foot. So I'm still able to be pretty darn close to as quiet with that shoe without taking my feet off. Pretty close. So that's the one thing with that. The other thing, I just in general don't like real loose, baggy, say, pants.
Right.
And especially in hunting, I really don't like it because it catches on more brush and snags. And, like if you're a tree stand guy, you want to be mindful of that because every piece of brush your clothes are touching is leaving a little bit of odor, like getting close to your tree stand or whatever. And not saying that that's not important on the ground either, but I like stretchy because on the ground you got to be mobile and ninja-y like. And so I like stretchy, thin, lightweight pants that are pretty tight to the skin because they don't, even if they touch brush, they don't snag. It just kind of slides off them, just glides across them because there's not all the ripples in the clothing and then it's catching and stuff. And they can still get caught on briars and stuff, but they seem to not get caught as much. So
yeah, it's not as much surface for them to be grabbed by.
I'm talking about low level stuff because I don't have a lot of gear, by the time we were getting to the shoes and now we're moving down the track.
I like it because, everybody talks about that, right? Like gear isn't, but what I like about it is while your stuff isn't like, I have to have this or that, it's all important still, right? Like I take a stool with me. I don't know. I like stools.
Yeah.
If I can get in a setup where I can sit on that stool, I would prefer to do that. So it
would require less fidgeting and movement if you're comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah, because I don't love sitting on the ground. I feel weird with shots or if I have a bad knee, which probably is part of it. So I don't like being on my knees too long. So if I can take my weight off the knees and sit on the stool, then when it's time to move, my knee is good to go because it's not got all that pressure on it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't weigh 8 ounces. I mean, it's a small little stool. It's like this big. Slides straight into the back of my pack, and it goes with me, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff. But I don't care what brand it is. It could come from anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with your stuff. It's whatever pants you can find that are tight fitting, that stretch. That's what they can be, and breathable. Certain times are nice, and then if I'm doing a lot of moving, I mean, in the really cold part of winter, I get windproof stuff is nice, but by the time I get to where I want to go, I'm sweating my ass off because it didn't breathe on the way there.
Right.
So there's positives to negatives to that too. But man, I really appreciate your time,
Yeah.
and coming on talking about this awesome subject. It's probably my favorite thing to talk about, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, because I'm just, I feel like a kid in a candy store. It's just becoming like I don't really want to be. I mean, I want to be in a tree sometimes, but it's just, man, you pull in and like the second you get out of your truck, you don't have to worry about anything but hunting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
No,
saying?
yeah, it's more of a freestyle, go off the feel, adapt. Um, not it doesn't feel as much.
Orchestrated.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, this would happen. You go out there, you drag all the gear out there and get set up, and another hunter comes along the way. That's one thing that I noticed. Like hunting on the ground, no problem. Doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't bother me, and not that it did terribly in a terrible way in a tree stand, but it's I don't care who you are as a hunter, it creates a bummer effect.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
when you're trying to hunt, it creates a bummer effect towards the other hunter that maybe they knowingly came in and jived your hunt, but a lot of times they didn't. But still, it's like that stinking hunter, and it's like, well, he didn't
I
know.
spent 20 minutes getting up into this tree,
Right.
Yeah.
That's the funny rationalization of the mind that occurs, right? And so, it's like, whereas it's like, well, he didn't know. But on the ground, it's like no big deal because you don't have a lot into it. So
Yeah. Oh, no big deal, man. I just drug a stick over in front of me. I can find another one somewhere else.
over here,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Well, Jared, before we hit the stop button here, how can people check out Whitetail Adrenaline and the stuff you're doing? And we'll do that from there.
Yeah, our website, whitetailadrenaline.com. We've got all of our films on there. It's 18 years we've been doing it, so we've got them on there. And then we're not a lot of times super active on social media,
Love it.
but we'll have spurts here and there. But Instagram, our Instagram and Facebook. We've got a TikTok page too, but we don't really do much with that. And we've got a YouTube channel, but for people that haven't checked out the content, maybe go to YouTube, watch some of the trailer videos that are on there, that previews. Like I said, our model is a little bit different. You do have to buy our content because we don't do sponsors to fund it. That's why
That's how you make your money.
model.
Yeah.
But we also strive to produce a really good end product that people have found that they really enjoy. And a lot of people have found it worthwhile to purchase them, even with the free content models. So yeah, that's where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, Jared, man, I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
It was
Thanks.
I wouldn't say a dream come true, but it was close to it, man. You're one of those dudes that when I look at hunters and I put a hunter on a pedestal, you are on one of those pedestals. So it was a pleasure to talk to you today, man.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's one thing you got to be careful of is the self-inflicted.
It happened,
because then you can't get to the next level.
It happened. It's okay.
And we're human, so don't be putting me on a pedestal.
All right, maybe just a stool.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming on.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
See you.
Yep.